Assalamu alaikum. Namaste. Haru Nefer Hatepu. This is Kasank Ma'ad Keperu with another live broadcast for you. And today I want to talk to you about the Kemetic gods of the Tree of Life, what we call the Port Neteru, or the Pantheon of Gods. Before I get into that, though, I want you to smash that like button, hit that like button, and if this is your first time watching, please subscribe to my channel. And also, if you get an opportunity, become a Patreon supporter where you can get exclusive videos, some really cool videos that really get into the details of magic and how to become a magi, all right, which is we call a magician. Alrighty, so let's talk about the Port Neteru, or the Pantheon of the Gods. But before I do that, a number of people have been emailing me, asking me, saying, hey, listen, I've been trying to meditate, but I am very fidgety. It's not easy for me to sit in one place for 30 minutes or even 15 minutes. So one of the things that you can do is about a half hour or 45 minutes prior to doing your meditations is to take a caplet of GABA. Now, GABA is a natural amino acid. And what it does is it works on the left brain and it stops the thought process, because those who are very active, when you are used to being active most of your life, to sit down and meditate, the left brain starts to talk a lot, and the left brain is Sebek or Anubis. So you can't shut it off. So if you take a couple of caplets of GABA, it'll put you in an alternate state. More relaxed state, and it's all natural, so it's good for you. You can find it at GNC Vitamin Shop. So I would highly advise that you get that. And again, take it 30 to 45 minutes prior to you meditating. And also, if you feel yourself getting some anxiety or nervousness throughout the day, so take one. Don't take too many, because you'll start to feel sleepy. And it will calm you down. It'll just, because most of the times what gets into trouble is our belief system. Someone says something to us and we interpret it a certain way, and we get all out of shape, we get out of pocket, and then we start yelling back, and then it causes problems. So the GABA will help you to stop overthinking or overanalyzing situations and what people say. All right, and it's interesting today, because speaking about that today. I had something happen, and I was like, wow, that was really unexpected. And I'll let you guys in. I got a bill for $3,000, and the bill was I have to pay the bill rather soon. And I said, I did not expect that, right? So one of the things that when you have these interruptions in your life, one of the things that you need to do is, first and foremost, not to look at it as a bad thing. Because when you start addressing it as something that is causing an obstruction in your life, then it tends to grow and it will stay in your life. But if you have more of a ma'at attitude, which is optimism and a joyful expression, Haru, then the actual thing will even transform, or you'll get money to actually pay it off, and it won't be a burdensome. Do you understand what I mean? So not only is, a lot of people will talk about, have a positive approach, but don't forget that your emotions and your belief system is tied to reality, because reality responds to the observer. So if you look at something and you assign it a quality, then it becomes that thing. If you say this is difficult, then it will become difficult. If you say this is not a big deal, it's easy, and it will be easy, depending on how strong your belief system is. So keep that in mind, because how we address things in life, specifically when things come up, there's surprises, things we didn't expect, or we get into situations where we may be arguing with our mate, our boss, or someone on the street that bumped into us. You've got to really understand that this is, put it to you this way. I wake up every day with the idea of, I'm going to create my reality today. All right? So, and I measure how it's going throughout the day. And if I see it's going off track, then I step back and I either do a quick meditation or do a quick visualization of the way I want it to go. Now, that doesn't mean that things won't come up and surprise you. They will, because that's part of your destiny, And part of my destiny is to take neither gain nor loss to heart, because heart deals with ma'at. So whatever happens, I have to be joyful in the face of this obstruction, or what seems to be an obstruction. And remember, Tahuti tells us nothing has a quality in and of itself. So nothing is really good or really bad. That's just you assigning a color to it. You know what I mean? So be very cognizant of that, because if you're not, then you're going to live a very, very hard life. You know, things are going to come at you, and you're going to be angry, upset, and you're going to die early from stress-related illnesses. And you don't want to do that, because you want to live in a state of Haru, Hathor, of joy, you know, because that's importante, all right? So anyway, what I was saying, so my attitude was, okay, this is not a big deal. I expected something like this to come in, maybe not as this much, but hey, I'll deal with it, I'll handle it, you know? And it was funny because I was conversing with a very famous hypnotist. And one of the things that I asked him, and I said, you know, this guy's really a master at hypnosis. So I said, you know, is it possible to totally eliminate fear through hypnosis? Now, when I mean, of course that's possible. Now, what I was referring to was the primitive mechanism of fight or flight. Can you eliminate that? Because that was put into us during early primal stages. And I love his response. He was like, he says, I don't want to really address that, but what I'll say is this: no matter what happens in your life, you will handle it. And I was like, that is great. You will handle it. I'm like, okay. He says, you've handled it before, and you'll handle it now, and you'll handle it in the future. So don't worry about it. I'm like, hey, that was really a good response, you know. He says, there's nothing to be fearful of, because you have the reference experience that you've handled these situations in the past. So always think about that. You know, the Bible tells us that God doesn't give you too much. God only gives you what you can handle, which is precisely right. So let me just greet the Magi's in the chat box. Mike, Hetepu, Suan, Hetepu, and Offset, good to see you. Haru Nefer. So let's talk about the pantheon of the gods. Now, the Kemetic people were very scientific people, despite what modern historians try to paint them as very primitive. They were very advanced people, not only from a spiritual perspective, but technology as well. So what they did was they went ahead and created this complex relationship on the Tree of Life that is akin to the in chemistry, the table of elements. They created this correspondence with the gods. And one of the things that I've always said to individuals who are out there preaching the Kemetic stuff, who call themselves Kemetians, who call themselves Hotepers or the Hotep community, when I hear them referring to things like good, bad, evil, it really saddens me, because I told you that the ancient Kemetic people, the ancient Egyptians, never saw life in that way. Now, they did understand that there were some things that were not good for you or healthy for you. They understood that, all right? But they were always looking to bring things back into balance. They didn't look at it as a total evil thing. They said, well, this thing is here to bring out your spiritual growth. The challenge is here for you to grow your spiritual muscle. They always looked at life as having complements. Now, someone was trying to say, well, Egypt was a matriarchy. No, and another person was saying, no, Egypt was a patriarchy. And I was saying Egypt is neither. Because if you understand how the Kemetic people think, which was integrated thinking process, they think in cosmological terms, cosmology, meaning that you're assigned a value and a place within the large scheme of the universe, and that is really deals a lot with your astrological chart. Let's say it that way. It's, you know, what energies are governing you, okay? And those energies that are governing you determine what career you should be in, what mate you should go with, you know, how you handle your finances, if you're right for kingship or queenship. That's how they determine things. And the reason that you saw the king and the queen together seated was always because they wanted that balance, that cosmological balance of energies. So you can't say like, well, they were all about equality. No, they weren't about equality. They were not. And they weren't about matriarchy, or yes, they were matrilineal, meaning that the throne went through the female line. But the thing you have to keep in mind is they looked at things in the abstract perspective, internally, as balancing of energies. All right? So just remember that. And that is the way, when they looked at the gods, who represented to them archetypes in the psychic realm, within the realm of the subconscious mind, they were looking not only at the heavenly gods, but also in terms of as above, so below, the atoms, the electrons, the neutrons, the protons. They were looking and studying all of this. And they devised the gods as a way to in a hieroglyphic or pictorial way to communicate those energies that govern everything. So when you say, yes, they knew about the atom because they had something called Aton, a deity called Aton, which is really atom, but they didn't look at it as representing a specific thing, but they looked at it as representing many different things and a quality. So to them, when you said, for example, the goddess Set or Isis, she represented the trance state, she represented motherhood, she represented moist energy, you know what I mean? So you have to understand that in their language, the hieroglyphics, the Medunetta, they were really into puns, a meaning within a meaning within a meaning. Or if you read their stories, they always had a story within a story within a story. You know what I mean? And modern Egyptologists, it drove Egyptologists crazy because they couldn't understand what they were trying to do. And definitely the Christian church, the first church was the Coptic church, they misinterpreted everything. So when they created the Bible, the Roman Emperor Constantine put the Bible together in 25 AD, what they were looking at was when they said, oh, Isis, oh, that's just a female, a real woman who's giving birth to a little boy. No, it didn't mean a real woman. It represented energies, principles. Set was a deity, but they changed Set into Mary to represent a real woman, and Haru into Jesus to represent a real man. This is because the Western society, the European mindset, was more left brain, concrete thinking, where the right brain was abstract thinking, and that's how we were. Integrated brain can toggle back and forth between literal meaning and abstract meaning. So let's go and look at the Kemetic tree of life, and this way we'll get a really good idea of how the Kemetic people, their thinking process, and how they saw that life was really about relationships, cosmology. Okay, can we take a look at this? Let me see if I can get this right. Here we have the pantheon of the gods, or the tree of life. And I'm sure many of you saw before, like, for example, in my last broadcast, okay? Now, the important thing to keep in mind, whoops, sorry about that. The important thing to keep in mind with this is that what I talked about before was you climb up the tree for your spiritual ascension, and then you come down the tree. And each deity on these spheres represents a certain energy or quality. Haru, for example, Set, which is the ninth sphere, represents trance state. Sebek, or Anubis, represents the left brain. He's about facts and beliefs. Haru is about imagination and joy. Haru is your will. Harukuhuti is the god of justice. He enforces justice. Ma'at is the law, reciprocity, balance. Sekert is spiritual power and cycles. Tahuti is God's wisdom. And Oser is God on earth, and he's known as the judge. And in the story of Set, Haru's uncle Set killed Oser, and Haru had the battle set for the throne, and the only way he was able to defeat Set was by going to Tahuti for supreme wisdom, which is the right brain. So let's go into the next slide, which is, this is how our ancient ancestors, the Egyptians, they knew what the brain was composed of. They knew that the earliest parts of the brain were the reptilian brain, the limbic brain, or the emotional mammalian brain, and then the neocortex. The neocortex will be represented as your will, your rationalization, your thinking. The limbic is the emotions. The emotions which can get carried away, and the reptilian brain is a very instinctual actions, fight or flight. You understand what I'm saying? And in this way, when you climb up the tree to become an Osirian, the Egyptians saw that you're moving at the same way from the brain, from the reptilian to the limbic to the neocortex. And getting here to the neocortex, you would ascend to the throne, going back to the representation of Haru. You would climb from the base of the tree of life to the top. Now, every sphere on this tree of life represents something important. But more importantly, these deities have a relationship with one another, a very important relationship that we need to explore. But let's go back into exploring how the hemispheres of the brains are broken up. On the left side, we have the left brain. The right side, we have the right brain. So, Tahuti's right brain, Ma'at's right brain, Haru's right brain, Sebek is left brain, Harukahuti left brain, and Sekret left brain, okay? So with that understanding, I want to dive a little bit more into these functions of the brain. You follow me? So the left brain functions look at the small picture. It breaks things up to pieces. It labels. It defines. The right brain sees the bigger picture. The right brain is dealing with emotions. It deals with abstract concepts, while the right brain is linear and logical in its thinking. The problem with the world today, kind of like my presentation here, is we're polarized in left brain thinking. And that gets us into so much trouble. Because when you are trapped in the left brain, all you see is separation of things. All you can do is just split hairs, separate things, label, define them. Well, I'm part of Me Too. I'm feminist. No, I'm part of MGTOW. I'm men's right movement. I'm conservative. I'm liberal. These are all these things that get us into trouble, and the left brain does not seek to find relationships between things. And that is important. So let us go back to the Tree of Life and explore the first relationship. The first relationship that I would like to explore would be, well, we can explore this relationship between Osir and Osset, all right? Now, this is important because Osir and Osset have this very special relationship in the Kemetic story, and the story evolved many times, all right? Sigma male, what's up? So Osir and Osset were brother and sister, husband and wife, okay? But the relationship you need to understand there is that Osset represents the emotions. And we have a thing called the sorrows of Osset when she cried at the death she was mourning at the death of her husband Osir, okay? And then Osir represents the highest form of spiritual ascension, which is not being controlled by your emotions, being free from the emotions. This is the symbol of him as the mummy. And that mummy is just a metaphor for, being beyond the influence of emotions and not being subjected to your emotions. You follow me? So let's see if we can explore that combination in a little bit more depth, okay? So we have here, let me just pull that up for you guys. We have here Osset, and you see at the top she has her seat, and her wings. So that's Osset, and let me see if I can bring up for you Osir, so we can look at the iconography and get a better understanding of him, all right? So let me just see if I can do that real quick. For some reason, it cuts off on the right. I don't know why it does that, but let's see. Yeah, it cuts off on the right. That's all set. And next to her is her mate, Osir, and symbolized by the mummy. Let me see if I can play around with that and bring him in. Can I bring him in a little bit more? Yeah, there he is. So that is Osir, the mummy. So this combination on the Tree of Life is a very special combination, because what we're looking at here is we're looking at Osir and Oset. One is emotionalism, and the other one is beyond the influence of emotions. And what they do is they complement each other. So what you'll have is the brothers coming along, and they'll be like, well, the black woman is God, and they'll forget about Osir. The Egyptians saw balance in everything. They did not have one without the other. All right. So let's keep that in mind. Okay. So going back to the Tree of Life, if you see it, we have, when you start your spiritual journey, you go first with Oset. Okay. You start with Oset, and then you go up and you climb. So you're going from 9 to 1 Osir. Okay. So that's your first thing you're going to do. Now let's explore another one, which is a very important relationship, and that's 8 and 2, Sebek and Tehuti. All right, let's see if we explore that. Now, Sebek and Tehuti. Sebek has these long ears, and Tehuti is the ibis bird, right? So this is, Sebek represents left brain, and Tehuti represents right brain. So Sebek is belief system, is facts, is logical thinking, is linear thinking. Now, Tehuti is wisdom. So Sebek is very much on being informed. Sebek is information, where Tehuti is wisdom. And there's a stark difference between the two, because information comes from reading books, going to the universities, and you can regurgitate information. But wisdom comes from the Akashic records. So when you're looking to intuit wisdom and knowledge, you don't have to research and reference books, because you can pull from the Akashic records. So that's a stark difference between Sebek, who is based on linear thought process and being schooled and learning and getting information. Hence is where we had the Library of Alexandria, which burned down. That was a storehouse of knowledge, of papyrus that was stored there. And we lost all that knowledge. And it was the Illuminati that burnt that down, because they wanted to retard the progress of the planet. You feel me? Okay. So that's a special combination. And you can't have one without the other. They complement each other. Okay? And that's, again, the Tree of Life. Now here's another special combination, okay? And we're going to look at 7, Haru and Sekert, okay? Very, very special combination. And there we go. We have Haru with sun disk and horns. The horns symbolize fertility. And we have Sekert, a bird, okay? Sekert is an older woman, and Haru is a younger woman. So Haru symbolizes joy. And Haru is very much into external beauty. She's all about the external pleasures. Now, Sekert has evolved. She is the master sage, priestess. She's a witch. She governs the 72 words of power. So Sekert can move mountains. She's all about spiritual power. And it says Sekert has died to the things of the world. Meaning Sekert doesn't care about like material things or how things look, if they're pretty. She's all about the internalized stuff. She's all about gaining spiritual power, where for Haru, she wants things to be pretty. She wants things to look good, smell good. All right? And Haru is about the imagination. You need the imagination to invoke spiritual power. So these two are a necessary combination. You feel me? Okay, great. Let's move on. All right. Here's another combination that we need to explore. This is Ma'at, and this is Tehuti. Ma'at and Tehuti are husband and wife. Okay? Now, Tahuti is the measure of the law, and Ma'at is the law. All right? So you cannot have the law without a correct means to apply the law. And since Tahuti is wisdom that comes from intuiting wisdom from God, you know that how Tahuti says the law should be applied will always be correct. Why? Because he is beyond just facts and information. Now, we talked about before how Sebek, Sebek, he's all about information. Now, when you're informed about something, I gave this analogy before, things can be factual, but not necessarily true. You walk into a room and you see a woman on the floor with a gunshot wound in her back and the guy standing over her with a smoking gun. Did he shoot the woman lying on the floor? Well, the facts are he has a gun. The facts are the woman's on the floor. But did he shoot the woman? You don't know that. And in our courts of law today, you can convict somebody based on no circumstantial evidence. But Tahuti can come along and Tahuti can say there was a third person in that room that committed the crime. It wasn't the man standing there with a smoking gun, because Tahuti is wisdom. And more importantly, Tahuti, as a right brain thinker, sees the bigger picture, whereas Sebek, he can only see the small individual pieces. He doesn't, in other words, you could say that Sebek doesn't see the whole. He can be good at connecting dots, logical thinking, linear thinking, but nonlinear thinking, intuiting wisdom, that's not Sebek, all right? Now, another important combination is Haru and Set. And as you see here, the Egyptian hieroglyphics has Set coming out of Haru. And this is very important because Haru stands for your will, all right? Now, if you've watched The Empire Strikes Back with Luke Skywalker, Yoda, Luke Skywalker was going to go in this tree, and not many people understood the meaning of this. And he wanted to take his lightsaber, and Yoda told him, you won't need that lightsaber. So Luke said, well, what's inside the tree? And Yoda said, only what you take with you. And the Egyptians, our ancestors, saw the importance of Set, and they said, well, Haru's battle is really against himself. He's battling his animal nature, which we go back to. Haru is battling the reptilian brain and the limbic brain, because Haru's trying to rise to the neocortex to be able to think in terms of circumspection, to be able to examine all sides of the argument or all sides of the tree, and then make an intelligent, logical decision from there. Remember, in the battle against Set, every time he would fight Set, it would end in a stalemate, which meant he lost. So he had to go seek out the wisdom of Tahuti. And then only then was he victorious. He didn't seek the information or knowledge that came from Sebek. He had to go to Tahuti. And in the true story of Osir and the Set, Set was messing up Egypt, man. He was terrorizing Egypt. And there was only one person Set would not mess with, and that was Tahuti. He left Tahuti alone. He didn't want to mess with that guy. And I just want to bring this one out, too. This is a really good image of the battle of Haru and Set. And it was a fierce battle in Kemet. Now, as I explained before, this is all, it's an allegory, okay? It's meant to communicate spiritual principles, energies of the universe, the cells that exist in our bodies that are interdependent, interconnected. It's meant to represent all of that, okay? So again, as I said before, it wasn't until Haru was able to seek counsel from Tahuti that he was able to sit on the throne. And this is the thing about your life. Tahuti represents a very young person who can be arrogant and won't listen to the sage or won't listen to the elder. So on Suhuti, when Haru represents a young person who doesn't listen to the sage or the elder. So when Haru ascended to the throne, his chief counselor was Tahuti. Does that make sense? Okay. One of the last combinations that I'd like to explore is Amen and Geb. That's a very important combination. And if you look at the tree of life, you have Geb at the very bottom, which you can't see here, and Amen at the very top. Now, as I explained before in the previous video, Amen is the highest state of peace at rest. And you have some individuals coming out there with this notion trying to assign a quality to God, whether male or female. And you can't do that because God is Amen. God is the hidden. And I believe it was the Bible that says, don't make not a graven image of God or whatever, meaning that you cannot represent God as one thing. Hence, God is everything, yet no one thing. Okay? So just for visual reference, Amen here, and then you have Geb. So Geb is the earth. It's the densest part. It is the third density. And Amen is the no thingness. It is energy at rest. It is peace. And this is the peace that is within you that you can achieve. You know, we look at suffering that's going on in the world, you know, whether it be the Holocaust or even slavery. And people are saying, well, why would God allow such things to go on? That is because God built in to all of us a safety mechanism. And that mechanism is Amen, peace, meaning that you have the ability, no matter what's going on in the external world, to tap into a peace that nothing can disturb. Nothing. And when you go to that peace state, and I talked about this before, you're at rest. And the peace state is a wonderful state for healing. And this is the secret that they're trying to hide from us within the hemispheres of the brain. We know there's a left brain, there's a right brain, but what they don't tell you is there's the integrated brain thinking, and more important, there is the collective consciousness or the super consciousness. All right? And tapping into Amen, you are tapping into all things. You are becoming one with all things. Hence, you know one thing. And God is known as the no-thingness or the nothingness. And now modern quantum physics is realizing that the Big Bang, or what all that is that came into being from nothing. All right? This is why you have no beginning, you'll have no end. Okay? This is how our ancestors looked at things. They looked at things in terms of what the deities represented and their interconnection with each other. All right? And then we can take this further in terms of looking at how you can apply this to your relationships. Like, for example, Haru had a relationship with Hurukuhuti because Haru loved his manhood. This guy was aggressive. That testosterone was off the charts. And when Haru walked into a room, when Harukuhuti walked into a room, he took Haru as his woman. But the relationship didn't last because Harukuhuti's energy is too fiery. It can't last that long. So Haru eventually married Haru, the king, Haru. And you know that Oser married Elset and gave birth to Haru. That's the Holy Trinity there, the Holy Trinity. And you know that Tahuti and Ma'at are married, husband and wife. That's a good correspondence, a good combination. And Seker is a loner. She's only interested in, she's a grand priestess, and she's only interested in spiritual power, the pursuit of spiritual power, and embodying God's power. So these relationships and how they interact with each other is very important for understanding even your relationships. For example, if you are a Haru type person, then you are a person who is looking for pleasure in your relationship. Haru. The man has to bring you flowers. He has to tell you how pretty you look. Things have to smell nice, look nice. You've got to have the nice, and Haru's a socialite. She loves to socialize. All right? If you are a seeker type person, you're very internal and withdrawn. You're a loner. You don't emote a lot. You don't show emotions. Haru loves to smile. Haru brings her own happiness to things, you know? Now, if you're a Sebek type man, you're very logical. You're a good communicator or orator. So you can woo women with your verbal skills. You love reading. You love acquiring information. So if you are a Haru type person, you're very disciplined. And the woman that you're going to be seeking to complement that will be a Haru type of woman, a Hathor type woman. And Haru is a leader. So you have leadership qualities. And this is the basis of our oracle system, our divination system. Because we use the tree of life when we are divining. And one of the oldest oracle systems that there is the Oracle of Delphi. And in Greece, when the Greeks went to seek counseling, they went to the Oracle of Delphi, which was a woman who went into trance state, that's Sekert, and would dispense wisdom and knowledge. Yes, the Greeks should do this. No, they shouldn't do that. Yes, they can go to war. And you saw this in the movie 300. Okay? Now, individuals will come along and tell you that Egypt was a polytheist society. And that Moses, or Akhenaten, was the first one to bring the concept of monotheism. That's a lie. Because we knew that that God emanated from zero, amen, and that the one became the two, and then from there all things happen. And if you look at the Egyptian story of creation, you have Shu and Tefnut. So there are other deities, and you have Shu, Tefnut, then came Ra, you know. So we understood that God comes in a multitude of forms, but going back to the origin, there is the one God. The one that comes as the many. Because again, through integrated brain thinking, we knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that you could have the idea of polytheism and monotheism at the same time. There was no contradiction. But remember what I said, when you get caught up in left brain thinking, you get polarized in left brain thinking, it's either right or wrong, black or white. Either I kill him or he lives. And this is the problem with the world today. And some of you may have read the ebooks that you've downloaded, and in that I gave a very a real story of an African priest who was a slave. And the slave master said, I want you to start practicing Christianity. And I believe he gave him like a statue of Mary. So what the priest did was he put the statue of Mary on his shrine next to Haru and the other deities. And the slave master said, well, my idea was for you to get rid of the African religion and just worship our Christian religion. And the priest was like, no, I just incorporated it into our African religion. There's no contradiction. We can have all of it as one. But Western people are corrupted mentally because they think it has to be either one or the other. They don't see how the whole, the half is just one part of the whole, and that they're both necessary, the yin and the yang, to complete the whole. This is why I said you cannot eliminate racism by the judicial system or prosecuting those individuals, because you're only bring it back because the mindset has to go from left brain to integrated brain thinking. When we make that dramatic shift, then racism will disappear. But as long as we're caught up in linear left brain time space continuum thinking, we're going to be racist. We're going to seek to eliminate. And when you are polarized in left brain thinking, what you really become, and which is most people in this society, are sociopaths, or which is even worse, split personalities. Because your subconscious mind is always trying to integrate. And because this world is imposing upon you, oh, Russia is the enemy, North Korea is the enemy. We never thought like that. So the majority of people, indigenous people of melanin complexion, it drives us crazy because we're seeking to integrate, not to separate, not to polarize. This is why when I say you see these so-called Hotep people and the Kemetic people talking about, oh, so-and-so is this, so-and-so has a white man or a white girl, and so-and-so. I'm like, are you crazy? Look at how you're thinking. Look at how you're thinking. You know nothing of the story of Osiris Set. You don't understand complements, correspondences. You know nothing about that. You know nothing about cosmology. How are you going to say that ancient Kemetic people were matrilineal, or matriarchs, when you're using a Western term to impose upon an ancient civilization that lived by cosmology? And Nikki, you're right. DMT will, and this is why they outlaw DMT and ayahuasca, because that will make you not only an integrated brain thinker, but that will put you in contact with the collective consciousness, which Carl Jung talked about, and it will introduce you to the archetypes, meaning you will meet interdimensional beings that will give you counsel. And you will access the Akashic records. This society does not want that. Because the only way that the ruling elite can rule is to divide and conquer. They have to keep you divided. I said DMT is illegal. And you have to see a shaman. A lot of them, there are South America. There's retreats that go into South America. They're called DMT retreats. You can't get DMT. You can't get that on eBay. So, and you need to do an oracle reading before you do that, because it can be a very dangerous. Because what's trapped into your subconscious mind, if you are a very villainous and evil person, that's going to come out. All right, and so you have to be very careful of that. So I would say do an oracle reading on if you should do ayahuasca or DMT, and if you're going to get administered by a certain priest or shaman, do the reading on if that particular shaman should administer it to you, because there's some shaman who are only interested in money, and they may not put together the correct the chemical formula for you. All right, so be very, very careful of that. All right, because a lot of the shaman in South America are exploiting Westerners, because a lot of Westerners are going there because they have shown in medical experiments that ayahuasca can cure depression. It can cure a lot of certain things, which is why they refer to it as a medicine. Okay, so they don't want us to tap into the integrated brain thinking and the collective consciousness or the super consciousness, because when you start doing that, and if the planet shifts to that type of vibration, then the ruling elite will not be here, because we'll be shifting to a parallel world where they don't exist. If the masses of people start to do that, the planet will change overnight. This is why our ancient ancestors lived a very different life. But, for example, what they say was, we don't know how the pyramids were built. The ancient Kemetic people didn't leave that knowledge behind. Bullshit. They were very meticulous in recording their dynastic rules, their rulers, what happened in day-to-day life. They left that information behind, but the ruling elite went in there and stole that information on the levitation of the stones and kept that to themselves. This is why they're so desperate to say that the Kemetic people were white, trying to steal another culture. Because they know the importance of ancient Egypt. So, that is the Kemetic Tree of Life. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and if you are able to, please donate to the channel. The PayPal link is in the chat box. You can do that. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Let me see. I'm going to address any questions before I go. Okay, I saw that one. Hey, Mike, do free will exist? Yes, it does. Okay. The definition of free will means that you are not. You have to understand. You are free. From you're a man. You're at peace. You are free from compulsions. You're not an animal which operates only on instinctive behavior. So when you're born, you have no inclination to the left or right, but it's through the process of nurturing you, where you're conditioned by society, conditioned by your parents and so on. Do you take on certain qualities and traits, but your essential nature is beyond emotions. That's what we mean by your will is free. So the emotions that we may experience in the Holocaust or in slavery are definitions and beliefs that we've accepted. And when you accept those definitions and beliefs, then you open yourself up to pain and suffering. But if you learn to go beyond those definitions and beliefs, then you become a man at peace and at rest. And you don't have to suffer from what appears to be a painful event. And when you're at the second level, you know that no matter what they do to you, even taking your life, that you know that I'm immortal. I have always been and always will be. So you know they could take your physical body, but you know you'll be reincarnated. You're coming back. And therefore you can be Haru, you can be joyous, knowing that your essential state is consciousness, and that you'll just simply get uploaded into the ether and then be downloaded back into another body. But because they get us trapped in sensory experience, they trap us in sensory experience, we think we are the thing. We think we are the body. We think we are Geb. We are not the body. So if I think, this is why in the Kemetic tradition we say my person. My person represents the physical body and emotions. But myself, or my true self, is beyond pain, pleasure, emotions, and all that. So when our language is geared toward reinforcing the notion of our true essence, all right, this is why most of your ministers and priests, they are caught up in third density. Because if they weren't caught up in third density, they would not be looking for jet planes and money and tithing and women. But when you're at that second level, all that is meaningless. All that is meaningless. Because you're so centered within that they can't bribe you, they can't woo you, because your own the thing that you strive to be is one with God, or back to your essential nature, which is free will. So I hope that answers your question there. Okay? Nikki, you're coming back. Nikki, you're coming back. I'm sorry. we all, a lot of people are like, this is too tough. I don't want to be reincarnated. So I'm like, yeah, well, that's only your person talking. You know what I mean? That's only your person talking. But you have a higher self that makes the deal with Tahuti. And you and Tahuti come to an agreement on what your destiny will be. Like when you go before Tahuti, Tahuti says, okay, so in your past lifetime, you've done so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. So that means that this lifetime now, I want you to experience what it's like to be poor. I want you to experience like to get a divorce. And then you, your higher self, says, all right. And because your higher self wants to challenge. It wants to be God, you know? And but your person says, why the hell did I agree to this? What the hell was I drinking? This is some crazy shit. I'm trapped on this planet with these crazy people. This is crazy. But that agreement you made will help you ascend to the fifth dimension, and therefore you will gain sagehood, or you will become an honored ancestor, and you will be able to guide other spirits and other people to bring about a revolution on the planet. See, we think we're in this alone. No, the ancestors are watching us, and the ancestors got our back. We merely have to tune in to them, whether it be through the meditation, through the trance, or through the help of medicine, the DMT, and the ayahuasca, but they're waiting to give us counsel. But the ruling elite is so slick and so crafty, like Sebek, that they get us to look away from all of that. They don't want us to turn to those things to save us. You know what they say? The revolution will not be televised, or we have to vote a new person in. You know what? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. We've voted. We've done this type of revolution before. It doesn't change anything. So you've got to start looking at spiritual power. You have to start looking at communicating with the ancestors and these interdimensional beings which are willing to help us and give us power to change the course of the planet. We have tried all of this other stuff, and it doesn't work. I'm okay with Trump because I know I didn't like Obama. I'm okay with Trump. I don't like him, but I know that it doesn't matter who they put in because they're just going to do another war. They're going to start another war. Who you elect doesn't change anything. It's like going to Vegas. Doesn't matter what game you played, the odds are always in the house's favor. That's how the ruling elite has set up the political system. It doesn't matter who you vote for. The odds are always in their favor. They win. Just like with World War I and World War II, they financed both sides of the war. It didn't matter who won. They won. So I want to thank you for tuning in, all my Magi's. And so make sure that you share this video. Let's get the message out there so we can change the direction of the planet. Link is in the description box for the PayPal if you want to become a PayPal supporter. And I just uploaded some great exclusive videos, to Patreon, so you can contribute to the Patreon campaign and get those exclusive how-to videos on becoming a Magi. And download the ebooks, and they're free. The ebooks are free. And check out my website at kasankma'akeperu.com for any consultations that you want, any hypnosis sessions. So thank you. And the next time that you see someone, say Haru Nefer, and that's Haru's greeting for joy, okay? This is Kasank Ma'akeperu, son of Ma'at and Tahuti. And as usual, I'm in Ra.